friends, welcome back to another episode of Android Fragments tutorial. In this episode we are going to learn about the communications between fragments. The direct communication between two fragments is not possible. A fragment can communicate with another fragment through an activity. So here in this episode I am going to create a simple Android application that will demonstrate how a fragment communicates with an Android activity. So here into this activity I am going to add a fragment that contains some radio buttons. Each radio button will represent a color name. So the user can select a color using the fragment, and based on the user selection we have to change the background color of the activity. So the fragment will pass the color name to the activity, and based on the user selection we have to change the background color of the activity. Okay, that is our target. So go to the XML file. First change this one into linear layout. Also change the orientation into Android orientation into vertical. There is a text view is present. Fragment communication example. Width is wrap content. Width is change into match parent. Height is wrap content. And change the gravity into center. Android text appearance into Android text appearance large. Android text color into pure black. Okay, fragment communication example. Now we have to add a container for the fragment. So here I am going to add a relative layout for the fragment container. So add a new relative layout. Width is match parent. Provide a height of 300 dp. Also specify an ID for this relative layout. Android ID equal to plus ID. I name it as fragment container. Okay. Also specify some margin at the bottom. At top, Android margin top into something called 60 dp. Okay. Okay, that's enough. Also provide some margin at left and right. Android margin left into 20 dp. Also Android margin right into 20 dp. Okay, so this is the fragment container. Now we have to add a fragment into this fragment container. So we have to add a new fragment. So first here I am going to create the layout file for the fragment. Create a new layout resource file. Name it as fragment. Name it as color fragment layout. And click OK. So now here in this fragment we have to add some radio buttons that will represent some color names. Now here I am going to make the design of this fragment layout. Okay, now I finished the design of the fragment layout. Now here I add a text view and 3 radio buttons. The radio buttons are placed in a radio group. So here is the layout file. Add a text view, and here is the radio group with ID color group, and add 3 radio buttons with ID width and height and text attribute only. Okay, so here the id is available with radio group only, color group, that is the id of the radio group. Okay, now we have to create a Java class for this fragment layout. So create a new Java class, right click the package and create a new Java class. I name it as color fragment. Click OK. Extends fragment. Override the onCreate view. First here create an object of view class. Name it as view. Now initialize this object view equal to inflator dot inflate. First we have to specify the layout name for the fragment. So our layout name is color fragment layout. Now the view group container and false. Okay, and finally return view. So this fragment contain a radio group that contains some radio buttons. So we have to create an object of radio group on this fragment. So here I am going to create an object of radio group. So it is not here inside class. Radio group, I name it as color group. Okay, now we have to initialize the radio group object. So color group equal to view dot find view by id r dot id dot color group, that is the id of the radio group, and typecast this one into radio group. Okay, now we have to implement some interface to handle the click events of the radio buttons. So use the radio group color group dot this one set on checked change listener. And from this id we can find out which radio button is actually selected by the user. Okay, so for that here I am going to add a switch case statement. Switch checked id. Now we have to find out which radio button is selected by the user. So on case 1 r dot id dot red id, that is the red color radio button. What is the problem? Okay, it is not capital letter, it is small letter. Switch. Okay, so if the selected radio button is red button, we have to change the background color of the activity into red color. So this is the first case. Now the second case is case r dot id dot blue id. One more radio button is there, green. So the third case is r dot id dot green id. Okay, so now we have to establish a communication between this fragment and the main activity. So before going to establish the communication, we have to add this fragment into the main activity. There is no need of the options menu. Remove all the unwanted code segments. So first here we have to add the fragment into the activity main.xml file, into the fragment container. So first we have to create an object of fragment manager. name it as fragment manager equal to get fragment manager. Now we need an object of fragment transaction. Fragment transaction equal to fragment manager dot begin transaction. So now we have to create an object of color fragment. So color fragment equal to new color fragment. Now we have to add the fragment into the container. So fragment transaction dot add. First specify the container r.id dot. The container name is fragment container. Next we have to specify the fragment object name color fragment, and finally commit the transaction. So fragment transaction dot commit. Okay, so the communication between two fragments is established using interfaces. So you have to define an interface on the fragment, and the activity must implement that fragment, and we can establish the communication between the fragment and the activity through the abstract methods on the interfaces. Okay, so go to the color fragment. So here we have to create some interfaces for establishing the communication. So here I am going to create some interface, public interface. I name it as on color change listener, on color change listener. So now I am going to add an abstract method, public void color change with a string argument color name. So a fragment will get the interface implementation on its onAttach lifecycle method. So we have to override the onAttach lifecycle method. So before that we have to create an instance of this interface on color change listener. So just create an instance variable of that interface. So on color change listener. Okay, now we have to override the onAttach method, that is a lifecycle method of the fragment onAttach. So now in this method we can check whether the activity implement the interface. So for that we have to initialize the on color change listener in instance variable. So on color change listener equal to activity. Typecast this one into on color change listener. If the activity implemented the interface, this will not cause any exceptions. Otherwise, of course, it will cause some exception. So you have to put this in a try catch statement. Exception. What is here problem? Yeah, this is not here after the assignment operator. Okay, so now we have to implement this interface on the main activity. So go back to the main activity and implements that interface. Implement on color change listener, that is the interface name on our fragment called the color fragment. So color fragment dot on color change listener. Now here you need to implement the abstract method. The abstract method name is color change. Select that method and click OK. Now we override the abstract method. Okay. Now go back to color fragment. So if the user select the red radio button, we have to pass the color name. We have to pass the color name into the main activity abstract method color change. Okay. So you can use the on color change listener instance variable for that purpose. So on color change listener dot color change, call the method, pass red as value, break statement. If it is blue color, and if it is green color, we have to pass the value as green. Okay, now go to the main activity. So we will get the color name here on this color change method. Now here we have to change the activity color. So if color name dot equals if it is equal to red color, we have to change the activity background color into red color. So go to the activity main.xml file. We have to provide an ID for this linear layout, Android ID equal to plus ID. I name it as main layout ID. Now go to the main activity, create an object of linear layout here. So linear layout. Now we have to initialize the linear layout. So linear layout equal to find view by ID r dot id dot main layout ID. Typecast this one into linear layout. Okay. So if the color selected is red color, we have to change the background color of the linear layout. So linear layout dot set background color dot red color, else if it is equal to blue color, we have to change this one into blue color. Into color blue. One more else if is needed for green color. Equal to green. Change this one into green color. Okay. So for establishing a communication between a fragment and activity, you have to define an interface on the fragment. So in the color fragment, I create an interface called on color changed listener, and in that interface I create an abstract method called color change. So on the main activity, I implement that interface and override the abstract method, this one color change. And in the fragment, we can get a fragment will get the implementation of an interface on his on attached lifecycle method. So using the on attached lifecycle method, I initialize an instance variable for the interface. So by using that interface instance variable, a fragment can communicate with the activity that implement the interface. Okay, so now we can check the application. Now I am going to run this application. Okay, now we have the application available on the virtual device. Now here I am going to select the first radio button. Now we change the background color of the activity into red based on the radio button selection. Now I change it into blue color. Now change it into green color. So this is how we establish a communication between a fragment and activity. So in the next episode we are going to learn how two fragments communicate with each other through an activity. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.